Welcome to the Uniquely Texas podcast, where agriculture meets storytelling. I'm your host, Jean Lonie Dudley, and I'm excited to get to explore what makes some really special crops in Texas unique. Our goal at Uniquely Texas is to celebrate Texas agriculture and give a little love to some of the crops you might not even know are produced here. As we highlight some very unique things growing in Texas, we jokingly say from azaleas to zucchini, we also want to share the amazing families that are growing these special crops in the communities they help support. Before we get going, I want to share that Uniquely Texas is a project of Tarleton State University's College of Agriculture and Natural Resources with funding through the Texas Department of Agriculture Specialty Crop Block Grant. I am very excited for this episode. I have actually been waiting for this one for a while. I will admit that. This is one that has been a revelation to me since coming to Texas. It is beyond anything I've ever experienced. Going down and getting to see this grow, both items, we're actually going to have a twofer in this episode. And having them fresh off the tree has been amazing. We are talking citrus in this episode. So Texas is the third largest citrus producer in the United States, and a lot of people don't realize that. We've got a focus. We're going to talk about our grapefruit and our oranges, but the conditions are right that you could grow lemons, limes, mandarins, pomelos, satsumas, tangerines, kumquats, all the things. Now, we may not have that at commercial levels, but it points to the fact that Texas is really, man, you think about the size of the state and the different climates. You're going to go from the panhandle all the way down to the Rio Grande Valley, and you're going to have this subtropical destination that is just heaven for so many of the specialty crops that we talk about. I think it's fascinating, particularly because none of that's grown where I'm from, but I get to enjoy it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this. I do not say this to diminish product from any other state, but getting to eat it in Texas was just mind-blowing. The sweetness, the flavor, all of the things. So I am really excited. We've got a fantastic expert with us this week. We have April Flowers, who is the marketing director for Lone Star Citrus Growers. April, would you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Hi, sure. Thank you for having me on. So I love my job, and it's the job I never imagined I would fall into, but it just worked out beautifully. I started off as a high school teacher, and my husband was in the produce business, and he and my father-in-law went in together and created their own citrus operation. After a few years, I stuck my nose in their business and I said, "Hey guys, I feel like I'm your demographic and you could be doing a better job of getting to me." And so I came on as marketing and have just had a beautiful opportunity to do something that really hasn't been done very much in the produce department, which is branding. And,
Yeah.
typically you walk in and you see apples, you see oranges, you don't necessarily see the brands. There's just a handful of them. So we've had a lot of fun with it and really kind of, I feel like, had an opportunity to rejuvenate uh, red grapefruit for a younger generation, make it a little bit more approachable. I hope that's
Yeah.
the goal.
That's and it's outstanding because when you look and hopefully anybody that listens to this is going to go and look a little bit differently in the grocery store. It really is quite fascinating. I am guilty of this, so I am going to I don't want to say self-shame, but I guess I'm going to self-shame a little bit. I thought all red grapefruit were ruby reds, and I just called it all ruby red. And I was very quickly schooled that that was a specific variety ages ago that we don't even grow anymore. And so now winter sweets is a really neat one that you can go look for and get to know and know that that's Lone Star and that's coming out of you're growing that and processing that. And there are a couple, there are a couple of other names and varieties that have been developed, but it really is fascinating that Texas is known. It's not anyone who says ruby red. No, no, no. And my husband corrects me all the time. Um, but Texas is known for its red grapefruit, which is really unique in the market because everybody else is sort of a yellow or a white or a pink, maybe.
That's right. Yeah. So after the freezes in the 80s, there were two catastrophic freezes. And we had this new variety called Rio. And so the farmers started to plant this because what we have now is like, I would say 90% Rios. That is 7 to 10 times redder than a ruby red.
Wow.
So ruby red was just a wildly successful marketing campaign from before. And so
Yeah.
everybody thinks they want a ruby red. And I always tell them, no, you want a Rio. And
Yeah.
I work with a lot of influencers and bloggers, and I'm always having to like, no, we have to get away from ruby red. That's the old thing. What we have now
Yeah.
is so much redder.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. I'm going to ask if you'll, I get nerded out on the history of all these crops and I go down some rabbit holes. But this is one that I actually happened to know just from working with the industry and how we even got to Texas being in the red grapefruit game. So, would you talk a little bit about the history of grapefruit in Texas? Because it's really quite interesting how it first got here and then where we've gone from there.
Sure. So it was originally brought over by the Spanish, I believe, and the crops started growing, but Mr. Sherry. So we have a little community here called Sherryland. It's really a school district, but
Mhm.
it's this beautiful piece of the valley that lies in between Mission and McAllen. And Sherryland is where Mr. Sherry discovered the beauty of red grapefruit. So what has happened over time is we have a few different varieties that are actually still grown here, Henderson's, a couple others. Those come from bud sports. So a farmer pulls a grapefruit, cuts through it, and oh my goodness, this is red, not pink. And so that was kind of the birth of our red grapefruit. And then over time, we have wonderful people down at the Texas A&M Citrus Center, and they're constantly doing research on how do we improve this? How do we create a redder, sweeter grapefruit? And they've just been instrumental over the past several decades in getting us to that point. So now we're at this place where, we have varietals that have been, they've been working on creating. But right now I just feel like what we have is just perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
It-
I don't know how you go any better. So
yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, so you've mentioned a couple of things that I think are pretty neat to know, sort of from the consumer perspective. So I did go down this rabbit trail, so I'm going to share some years. Um, 1893. That's when the Spanish missionaries did it. They brought it from Florida to Texas, and with the subtropical climate, the soil that was there, they gave this out to farmers in the area. Everybody planted it. Boom, we have a new industry. So 1893 to 1929, it's pink grapefruit, white grapefruit. That's kind of what's coming off the trees. 1929, we get the magical natural gift of this red one that nobody knew what to do with, but it tasted amazing. And so I want to touch on the other piece. You've got this naturally occurring gift in the miracle of the red grapefruit, but we have wonderful partners at Texas A&M AgriLife, and that's exactly what you mentioned. We've got this whole citrus center. That's what it's dedicated to, is figuring out how to keep supporting our citrus industry. And boy, they have really advanced it from there. Redder and sweeter, all the way through to what we enjoy today. And it is really interesting to me. I shared this in a different episode, and I'm going to do it again, and I will attempt to do it without impugning the honor of any other states, because we love all of our agriculture and all of our families in agriculture. But this is the first grapefruit I do not have to put sugar on. You just sit and eat it.
I feel like it should, I don't want to eat it if I have to dump sugar on it.
And that's just growing up, that was what my mom did. So that was what I did. That was what I thought was
Right.
typical. And then coming down to visit before I'd even moved here, I had one, at my boyfriend at the time, and who you know, and Patrick just goes, "What are you doing?" And it just like started slapping it out of my hand, and he goes, "No, no, 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 that's not what you do here." And I have to laugh because I was used to cutting it in half, and you go through each little bit and you get your spoon and you eat it. And he just sort of chops it into chunks and goes to town. And all of it has changed how I approach grapefruit, because what is grown here really is a bit different in terms of the flavor profile, how you can eat it, what you can do with it. It is just incredible. I could probably brag on that all day, but you get to work with it all the time. What do you tell folks that are maybe having it for the first time or haven't bought any but could? What do you say to folks in terms of how to eat it, when to eat it, all of that?
So, one of the things I tell people, like I hear all the time, oh no, I don't like grapefruit. And the first thing I tell them is, I thought that too. When I was dating my husband, we came down and he was telling me they were in citrus. And I said, oh, what kind? And he said, grapefruit. And I said, I'm so sorry, because I had only ever experienced very acidic grapefruit. And we were riding horses and he pulls a piece of fruit off the tree and he opens, cuts it up and he gives me a bite. And I'm like, what is this? It looks like grapefruit, but that can't possibly be grapefruit. And he said, no, that's exactly what it is. And so our tagline for winter sweets is surprisingly sweet. I think that if somebody has been exposed to a highly acidic grapefruit, they kind of close their mind to it. We think of grapefruit as one piece of fruit, but really you have many varieties, many growing regions. And so I always encourage people, just try it. Just, your taste buds change, just give it a try.
Yeah.
But by far, as far as how to prepare it, so I spent all this time, I work with recipe developers. We have billions of recipes, but every night in my family, we section it. So it's called supreming, where we pull the meat out of the flesh, right? So we want to take the actual sections out of the pith and the peel. And it's not hard to do. It looks hard, but once you get the hang of it, it's super easy. And then all you're getting is that red fruit, and it's so good. So the reason we want to do that is the pith and the peel hold some of that bitterness that people associate with grapefruit. I mean, if you take it out of that, it's so good. And when I tell kids about this and they're like, oh, I don't know if I like that. Do you like Sour Patch Kids? Oh, yes. Yes, ma'am. You're going to love this even more. This is so much better and so much healthier. And they do. I hear a lot of times parents are under this misconception, oh, my kids won't like that. Kids love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I sent some to my daughter in college and she was so excited. It was like I sent her a bucket of gold. And so I always encourage people, go back to it, give it another shot. It's probably not what you remember from your childhood.
Yeah.
As far as selecting it, smooth skin. You want super, like the smoother the skin, the better, because that will mean that the skin is thinner, and the thinner the skin, the sweeter the fruit will be. So that's my big tip. Size is not such a big issue. So small grapefruit can still be very, very good. And the most important thing is, don't let an ugly grapefruit turn you away. It is very windy here in South Texas. On a regular Tuesday, we get wind gusts up to like 50, 60 miles an hour. So it's just extremely windy here. So our fruit gets scarred very easily. So you'll see it's kind of like, when you're pregnant and you get a stretch mark, your belly expands like one little nick, and then, oh my goodness, it's so big, right? So that's the same concept. When the fruit is little on the tree, it brushes and it hits a twig. It gets just like the tiniest little scratch, but as it expands, so does the scarring. So scarring is not at all indicative of the quality of the fruit. And I really wish we could, if I could make progress on any one thing, it would be helping people to understand that, because we really do need to reduce food waste. And this is the perfect place to start, because it really is still very good.
Yeah. So that's really, I didn't realize that feel the texture, worry about the smoothness
Mhm.
versus anything else. You have coined a phrase that I use often, and I think it is brilliant. I love this to talk about that scarring. You call it tropical beauty marks. And I am that human that I will get into a conversation with people at the grocery store about this stuff. And that is such a neat way to think of it, is that's just those beautiful winds rocking that baby grapefruit, and it just that little mark, but it's a tropical beauty mark. The stretch mark piece is perfect. That resonates incredibly well, but it's not the aesthetic. I know that we shop with our eyes, and
Mhm.
that is a big piece of it, but there are so many things that if we can take that sense out of the equation, it's a perfectly good food, and that feel is a lot more important than if
Yeah,
you
and
see.
the heaviness too.
Yeah,
So you want
okay.
to pick a heavier fruit because that's going to have more juice in it. So that's the other thing. Smooth skin, heavy fruit, you're good to go. Don't
Perfect.
worry about how pretty it is on the outside.
Yeah.
And you save some money too if you are willing to buy the scarred up fruit. I actually have a friend who told me that her grandfather taught her she should only pick the scarred fruit because he believed that meant it had been on the tree longer. And that could definitely be true in some
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
The longer it's there, the more time it has to get beat up. But yeah, I wish we could get the world to understand when it comes to citrus, it's the peel is nature's way of protecting the gold inside, right?
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it, it's the protective carrier. So we don't
That's
have to worry
awesome.
so much about that.
Yeah. And now, does the same on the orange side, because y'all grow oranges as well, is it the same? What do you look for in an orange? In Texas, oranges are known for their juiciness. And I know we have a very robust juice industry. In fact, there may be some other states nearby that send their product here for us to juice for them. Um, but you can also just grab it, peel it, eat it, and enjoy it. There's a lot you can do on the orange side with Texas grown product.
Yeah. So when it comes to the oranges, two things. My husband always says it has a face only its mother could love, and I'm its mother. They are very scarred. The oranges scar very, very easily. So they really are pretty ugly on the outside. But once you get to the inside, these oranges are so super sweet. I
Mhm.
will not eat oranges from anywhere else. I will not drink orange juice from anywhere else. So if you go to the grocery store and you pull just a commercial orange juice out of the fridge, the Brix acid ratio on that is probably going to be around 15, maybe as high as 2021. Ours hits at 27 to 32.
Yeah,
So it tastes like pure sugar, but it's the good sugar, right? It's
yeah,
nature,
yeah,
unrefined, and it's so, so sweet. To me, I love grapefruit fresh. I love orange juice. Like
yeah.
it's so good. It's my favorite thing about Christmas. We always juice a bunch of fresh fruit, and it's just delicious. But yes, you can peel it and eat it. We throw that in our fruit bowl every night as well, and they are ridiculously sweet.
So there are two things that I want to make sure we hit on, and that is the seasonality, which we'll come back to. But you talked about bricks. So this, I'm going to brag on Texas. I mean, basically, it means we're scientifically proven to be sweeter. And so bricks is the terminology in science. If you've done experiments, sometimes you will look at bricks levels. But in the industry, it's truly how we measure the sweetness of fruit. We do it for the citrus that we're talking about right now, but they'll also do it, they'll check it with apples, with all kinds of things that grow. And we don't talk about it a lot as consumers in the United States, but there are other countries that import our products that they put it on the label, and that's actually how consumers shop. They want to know that sweetness level. They want to know what they're getting. So that's a huge deal. That without any touching of it by humans, that's where we are. We're that sweet.
It's really incredible. And it's not just so much the sweetness, but that super low acid.
Hmm.
So I think that's really the difference. Once you have those two paired, that's what makes the flavor just truly phenomenal. So
Yeah.
yeah, we are very, very fortunate that, and that's just soil and our subtropical climate.
Hmm.
It's, the Magic Valley, it's
Yeah.
just the magic of it.
We had some in my past life when I got to work on the international marketing side, we had some buyers in, and we did come to see the Lone Star team and some other folks down in the valley. And I want to say we were there in October, late October, early November, and we pulled grapefruit off the tree and cut it up and let everybody have a bite. And we said, look, we're not harvesting yet. This is very, very early. And one of the buyers told us that it was already as sweet as what they normally got from other places. And
Mhm.
that's from other places around the world, not just Texas stuff. But it really is incredible what we've got set in terms of just what nature does and how we can help nurture that. You talked about the Christmas piece, and I've given away a little bit of it right now, but what's the seasonality for oranges and for grapefruit?
So we start up in a very slow way because we have this huge machinery. So we take a nice slow start, and that usually happens very end of September, early October.
Mhm.
By mid-November, we are full speed ahead. We're
Mhm.
pretty much at our pace, our typical pace. And then from Thanksgiving through end of January, it is a whirlwind
Mhm.
because you have a lot of gift fruit. You have then we get into the new year. We've had all the pies and the cookies and the cakes, right? And so now we're trying to clean up our diet a little bit. So January is a really big month for us as well. There are a lot of citrus festivals that happen at
Mhm.
that time. And then we are typically finished. It really does depend on Mother Nature, but I would
Yeah.
say end of March, April. Very rarely we've gone into May. Very
Yeah.
rarely. So it's not a super long season, but it kind of adds to the excitement of it. Like you got to get it while
Yeah.
you can get it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, and I know it's become for us actually a staple of what we send as gifts. And so you can go online and order Texas grapefruit and send it. We have delivered it personally when we've done the cross country trips to go. We're like little elves handing out grapefruit as we go. But people look for it now. My own mother has threatened to take back presents if she does not get grapefruit at Christmas,
I
and
love it.
specifically her Texas red grapefruit. And that is actually how my husband endeared himself to her. He shipped her some one year, and that was it. And so she now is always, Al's my favorite son-in-law. He's her only son-in-law, so that works out well. Nobody's offended, but it's a big
Fortunate.
thing. Yeah, exactly. It's a big thing for us in terms of that tradition and what we do. One of the things that I found fascinating coming to visit you, and getting to go through Lone Star and what all you do is it's not just the raw product though. You're doing a lot of value added and the science. Going into where you're doing the juice work and learning all about that was incredible to me. Do you mind talking a little bit about that as well?
Sure. So, we really want to use as much of the product as we can.
Mhm.
We want to be sustainable in that regard. So, when the fruit comes to the shed, the very first thing it's going to do is it's going to get processed. And in the first step of that, we're going to pull out anything that is not going to make the fresh grade. So,
Mhm.
we grow a fresh crop. So, we want to sell as much to the fresh market as possible because the input is so high for that.
Mhm.
If we were just growing a juice crop, we wouldn't have the high input, so it wouldn't be so critical, but we do. So anything that's going to pass through the fresh market then goes on and finishes its processing and packing. Anything that won't is going to go to juice. And so it's pulled out and it's sent to our juice plant across the street. And from there, the first step it goes through is it rolls over a series of pins and needles that prick the
Mhm.
skin. And that's an extractor. And so we can pull the peel oil out of that. That oil can be used for cosmetics. It can go into beer. We sent some to I think it was Rebel IPA several years ago, cleaning products. So that is I guess the second piece that we're pulling out, right? And then the third is the juice, of course. And
Yeah.
so we sell our juice by the tanker load and by the drum. And that goes to some people who just use that. But by and large, it gets mixed into the juice from other states to bring their
Yeah.
Brix acid ratio up. Once we've gone through all of that,
Mhm.
that waste then goes out to our cattle operation because the cows really, really like citrus. And
Mhm.
so we're able to kind of keep that, really use every piece of the fruit and minimize our waste as much as possible.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how you all do that. I mean, just and a lot of people don't realize when you're getting something that's grapefruit infused or grapefruit flavored or, the lip balm that's got some sort of a flavor to it or the cleaning product or the hand soap, that came from somewhere. And when you're lucky or you've done your homework on product, it may have come from you because it's that extracted essence and oil. I love that it then goes on to the cattle. What a full circle thing, and really making sure that you're taking care of everything. Because we often forget that which we cannot eat can sometimes be really, really healthy and good for our ruminant friends. And
Yeah.
so it's wonderful that everything goes through and y'all have folks on staff that as you're juicing and doing all this are actually checking levels and
Mhm.
making sure it's where you want it to be and get the quality control really just amazed me at what you're doing to make sure that even if you're keeping it, you're blending it to make it what you want when it goes out the door as well.
Right. So yeah, so if we have a juice customer that says, we want to buy a tanker of, I don't know, like 24, we can blend that specifically to get to that Brix acid ratio.
Yeah.
So it's neat. We have a lab and we have technicians on staff and they're constantly so we do not from concentrate. And so, they help with that aspect. They also help with, the food safety aspect
Mhm.
and making sure that all of our juice is, up to par and we
Yeah.
don't have any issues. So yeah, it's a big operation, no doubt.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, you think of you don't often realize how many people are involved in getting food to us and
Right.
in that process, and particularly on the fruit side, it is a lot of work from the time that you're getting the trees ready, that maybe you're planting in the nursery and you're figuring out if you're grafting onto another tree and what you're doing all the way through to that, the juice process or getting it back out to the cattle. There's a lot of folks involved and it really is pretty amazing. Um, there are a couple of other things that I want to touch on, and these are not the fun and friendly side of things. This is where you're located and the time that you grow. You have a lot of risk from hurricanes. You have a lot of risk from freezes. We've seen it. I went through and did a little bit of just looking at the last couple of years, and it's pretty incredible. I mean, you've got Hurricane Hannah in 2020, Winter
Mhm.
Storm Uri, so Snowmageddon in 2021. Then you had droughts in 22 and 23.
And
So
24.
and 24.
We're
So you've
still in it.
got
Mhm.
drought, you've got freezes, and you've got hurricanes, which we typically think of as too much water. And all of it, depending on when it hits in that cycle of growing, it impacts the fruit and what you're able to go get. I mean, that is wild to me, the role of weather in this. You can do everything right,
Mhm.
but there's
It
still
doesn't
just,
matter.
yeah, it doesn't. It really doesn't. And so it's taken a while to recover, particularly from Uri, and to get growth back up because a lot of trees had to get, taken out and groves replanted. What it can't be fun. What's that like on the grower side?
The past few years have definitely been challenging. I always joke, we had a couple hurricanes, couple freezes, pandemic, very long drought. If the river runs red, I'm out. Right? Like if the locusts come, we're
Yeah.
done. It's been very challenging, like you said. the only thing we can do is put, our very best effort into it. Some of the difference that you see in groves is really between the farmers who watered really hard after that freeze. The freeze of 21 was just catastrophic. I pray that I do not see another one of those again in my lifetime. I hope my kids won't have to live through one of those, because it really was, and it could have been so much worse. Um, but it's hard for us because we can't just replant.
Yeah.
Trees can live and produce for 30 years. So you're dealing with adult trees. If you plant a tree, you're looking at 3 years until it's producing. So it's a
Yeah.
3-year investment. It was really hard because we had just planted a good chunk of land. And we had to go back and regraft every one of those little baby trees because we lost them all.
Yeah.
But what people also don't understand is that the nurseries suffered that freeze as well. So the nursery
Yeah.
stock died. And so then it became, okay, well, who was already on the list? Now you're on a waiting list until
Yeah.
we can get that nursery stock back up and running. So it was really, really rough. And the trees are large organisms. And I
Hmm.
think that is very much taken for granted by somebody who doesn't really, isn't really in agriculture. These are huge organisms. It's like when we get the flu, we
Yeah.
may not be contagious after a few days, but it can still take a full week. It can take, some
Mm.
people take a month to get over illnesses, right?
Yeah.
People take a year. I mean, we have people with long COVID that took, are still fighting it. So these trees are huge organisms that react the same way to that kind of danger.
Yeah.
So the very first thing that happens is after a freeze like that is the leaves defoliate. So they fall off. Any fruit that was on, freezes and then thaws and it then falls because it's too heavy.
Yeah.
Uh, so the trees are under just great stress. And the way that they save themselves is to shed everything and let me,
Mhm.
kind of come into my shell and take a deep breath and relax a
Yeah.
little bit. So there's not much you can do at that point. Your season is
You're
over.
done. Yeah.
We were just done. We we did not have an insulated packing shed, so even everything that we had already harvested
Mhm.
and had ready to pack, even that we lost a lot of
Yeah.
it because, you just
Well,
be
everything
there.
there is built to stay cool, not to keep warm.
Right.
It's usually the
Exactly.
opposite issue. Yeah.
Exactly. So after that experience, we did go and we did insulate our entire packing shed. It was a
Yeah.
major project, but it is now temperature controlled. Um, but right after that, really the only thing you can do is just like water it really, really hard and hope
Yeah.
that that is helpful to the trees, that they can take
Yeah.
that up and rebuild their strength. But it's a gamble because water costs money, right?
Yeah.
It's not free.
Yeah.
And especially in the middle of a drought. And so you have this option of putting more input into trees that may ultimately die. You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting is when you walk through the orchards, the tree trunks expand and the bark cracks. And typically, when like you see as much cracking on the bark that we have right now, you would
Yeah.
expect the loss. You would not expect these trees to bounce back, but
Yeah.
by the grace of God, many of them did.
Yeah.
We are still only at about 75% production of a normal
Yeah.
crop because on the heels of that freeze was drought. So,
Yeah.
you know, people who were willing to really invest in it, yes, they did water. Um, and then it became an issue of can we get water? Because we
Yeah.
went into negative allocations. And, so we've had a very, very challenging few years, but farmers are perpetually optimistic
Yeah.
because Mother Nature gives and she takes, but she still gives back again.
Yeah.
And so, we're always just waiting for, the next good year. And there's always a good year coming
Yeah.
eventually, right?
Yeah.
You just have to be very resourceful, and you have to be very conservative in the way that you manage your land and your company and
Mhm.
your people, and really make sure that you have max efficiencies to make an operation like this sustainable.
Yeah. There's a quote that I love. There's a Canadian, he's a farmer, but he's also a poet. His name's Brian Brett, and he's got a quote that said, "Farming is a profession of hope."
I love
I
that.
think of that all the time because it is, and it's on so many levels. But you're right. It's about being a good steward today because that's got to cover me in those down years, and I have to make full advantage of it in the good years. But I also it you're gardening on this massive long-term scale. How do I
Mhm.
be really thoughtful with what I'm doing and making sure that it's going to be there for generations because they are such big organisms. So you mentioned, I'm going to take us back for a second. You mentioned nurseries and grafting, and that may be new to some of the folks listening. So would you talk a little bit about that and what that is?
Sure. So, in order to have that really durable tree, what we do is we graft grapefruit onto sour orange rootstock, because that sour orange rootstock is much hardier and it can withstand a lot more weather. It's much more tolerant. And so that is a process that begins at the nursery, and then we go from there and then we plant. Um, when they're already planted and they die, like happened in the freeze, then you're
Yeah,
going to go back and you have to regraft in the field because you can't pull them back up, right? And so
yeah.
that's an intensive, laborious project, but
Mhm.
it can be done, and we did. And but the reason we graft is really to have more resistance, and that's why we didn't lose everything in the freeze, because
Yeah.
we utilize that sour orange rootstock.
Yeah. And that is, just to let everybody know, that's actually a very common practice across a variety of fruit industry. You do it with apples, you can do it with peaches, you do it with all kinds of things. And in gardening, even with flowers, with ornamentals, grafting is a very common practice. So it's just giving what is going to grow the best opportunity you can to grow well. So my grandfather used to do it all the time with dahlias and some other stuff in the garden. And so grafting is this really interesting thing that tries to get you the best of both worlds, in hybrid vigor kind of. And so it's really interesting. That nursery component's really important as well because you don't just plant a seed in the ground and
Right.
let it grow. You've got a lot invested by the time it even gets out, outside and you're putting
Yes.
it in. And
Yes.
we see that in pecans as well, to use another Texas example. All of that happens the same way. So it really is, again, thinking about how we get this delicate organism as a wee little baby grown and sturdy enough to go out into the environment it's going to be in. So amazing to think again, there's science and art and nature in
Yeah.
all of this.
And so many hands
Yeah.
involved in just getting one piece of fruit onto somebody's dining room table.
Yeah.
It's truly astonishing how many people it takes to make this one little piece of fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. And to get it wherever it's going, because that's the whole other
Mhm.
piece of it
That is
is,
a whole other
it's
piece.
not just local. So in the news lately has been a challenge called citrus greening.
Yes.
And it's something that one of the things where I'll give my own little plug is this is where we all need to be thoughtful of what we do to help or potentially negatively impact agriculture. And it could be as simple as if you've got volunteer trees in your yard. I love the look of that orange tree. Well, maybe you don't need it, or maybe if it's just been growing in a vacant lot, we can get rid of it. To not give pests and some of these fungal challenges places to live.
Right.
Can you talk a little about that and what you're seeing and maybe how we as the general public can help support you?
Sure. So greening is a disease that is caused by the Asian citrus psyllid. And it's has a very long name that's very difficult to pronounce, and we call it HLB for short.
Yeah.
Um, and the psyllid likes to get up into the tree in the shade of the tree. So it's looking for shade. And
Hmm.
it's the result of that is you have fruit that just doesn't quite come into maturity correctly. The tree gets very diseased and it ultimately dies. But because it's pest borne, it can affect an entire orchard. So if we identify that, we rip that tree out immediately because
Yeah.
we don't want that to carry. I think Florida has been devastated by citrus greening, absolutely devastated. We have been very fortunate in that we haven't been affected as much,
Mhm.
not nearly as much. Is it here? Yeah, we see it, but it's not knocking out our commercial crop, thank
Yeah.
goodness. Um, the general public, and I know down here in the valley, I mean, listen, we love our citrus, and everybody's got a citrus tree in their backyard. The best thing that anybody can do is clean your tree at the end of the year, pull all of the fruit off, don't let it rot, don't let it
Yeah.
fall. If give it away to somebody so they can eat
Yeah.
it. They'll be happy for it, right? You'll be
Yeah.
very popular. But B, when we allow that to rot, then that's what is going to start attracting the entire bevy of pests, everything
Yeah.
from the fruit flies and I mean, just everything. If you have a tree with greening, pull it out.
Yeah.
Please pull it out because we don't want to give the psyllid a home. We don't want it to. We're very nice here in Texas. We love everybody except for that psyllid. We do not
Yeah.
want him here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, truly, truly, if you have a diseased tree, please pull it out and dispose of it.
Yeah. It's I know the Texas Department of Agriculture has recently set up more road stations as well. And part of the attempt in that is to lay eyes on what's coming and what's going, because Texas also is such a big part of how product moves, any product, but
Mhm.
particularly perishable stuff. Um, and sometimes that brings those invasives with it, those pests that we
Right.
don't want. So they're really trying to work hard to protect our industries on what's coming through. It may not, Texas may not be the final destination, but it may be a part of the path somewhere. And to make sure that we're protecting our producers as well, because once it's here, it's much easier to just try and keep it out. Let's put it that way.
Yes, much, much easier. And we are doing a lot of things that are, scientifically based. We're talking about this marriage of science and agriculture. And one of probably the most effective measures we have right now is reflective ground cover. So underneath the trees, we run this reflective material, and what it does is it shines, reflects the light, the sunlight up into the underside of the leaves.
Oh, so you get rid of the shady bits.
Right. So you make that tree a little
Fascinating.
more inhospitable to the pest. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Oh, that's pretty neat.
probably, yeah, it's pretty I mean, nothing in farming is cheap, right? But it's a lot cheaper than having to yank trees out and replant them
Yeah.
all the time. So
Yeah.
that is very helpful for sure.
Yeah. So it's I the takeaway for me from this episode is not what I thought it would be coming in.
Okay.
I knew we would hit the sweetness. I knew we would hit the tropical beauty marks, all the things to look for and how to buy. Um, but it also has been such a great reminder of how many people it takes to feed us. And when you look at the population, it's not that many. It's less than 2% that make a full-time living from production agriculture in this nation. We are multiple generations removed from family running farms for a living. But there are so many people involved, and it's so many hands. And it's not unique to produce, but I think produce, when you think about that nursery stock all the way through growing, any value added that you do, picking it up at the store, shipping it other places, there are a lot of people involved. And to then be able to go pick it up for, I know that food is pricier and feeling pricier than it has, but it's still relatively affordable. and to be able to
Mhm.
go get this fresh local product that is scientifically shown to be sweeter. I will argue that with anyone. Um, but
Love it.
to get it and have it, I think is just amazing. And what an incredible reminder of how important those folks are in our lives multiple times every day. I was going to say every day, but really 3 to 6 times a day, depending on how often you grab something to eat or go to the fridge.
Truly, truly. It's almost mind-blowing if you were to sit down and write out the entire process
Absolutely.
from nursery all the way through, how many people are involved, and, it's a huge piece of our economy down here in the
Hmm.
valley and supports so many people, so many families, and puts a roof over their head and food on
Yeah.
their table, and, um, I think that, yeah, groceries, you're right. It's very expensive right now, but for what you pay, you get so much out
Yeah.
of some fresh citrus here. You're really doing something that's giving back to your local community. You're getting just some of the best health benefits. Half of a grapefruit has 100% of your daily vitamin C,
Yeah.
right? So that's why we eat it every night.
Yeah.
You're treating yourself, you're treating your community, you're treating the land. You're really doing a good thing by eating fresh citrus. It's the
Yeah.
biggest bang for your buck at the grocery store, I think.
And whenever we buy local, and in this sense, I'm even going to say, Texas, it's a big
Sure.
state, but it's still local. Um, what you do economically for local communities is huge. The value of that money, and that's a whole other podcast of the movement of money locally. But anytime you're buying local products, there are huge benefits back to those communities. And I think on the agricultural side, it's one of the reasons I'm so excited to see more farmers markets that pop up or more opportunities, even to do mail order that, maybe we didn't have a couple of years ago, but now folks are getting into because it keeps that money with the producers and then it turns into community benefit because they're spending it locally. They're paying folks, they're out buying inputs, they're doing all the things. So agriculture really, it's the foundation of a civil society and it's so important to what we do, but it also is such a great way to make an investment back, buy that local product, look for the label, and think about what you're doing. The other added benefit is the one that you just mentioned, in that half a grapefruit is what you need for vitamin C every day. It helps bring us back to food as medicine and
Yes.
lifestyle medicine, eating what we need, getting the nutrients we want out of our food, and just being thoughtful of what we're consuming. I will admit, having a kid was game changing on that front for me. What I look at labels for now, what I make from scratch versus what I would have just bought. All of that starts to change when you think about it in terms of nourishing another human. I don't know why. I should have been thinking about it with myself too, but it's just
Right.
different now.
It is. It really is. And, it's almost a little bit sad when you do an aerial vision of a grocery store, how much is committed to processed foods and how little is committed to fresh, unprocessed foods. And gosh, I can't even think about that. That's so sad. Um, I think it's wildly important for kids these days. I get it. I'm a mom. I hate cooking. And I'm like, this is why I market because I'm the person I'm marketing to, right? Like, I everything is busy. I don't want to have to cook after a long day. But fortunately, I have a husband who is happy to get in the kitchen with me, and we're able to give our kids, really good, high quality food at the end of the day. And I really, really think that that is something our children just don't see enough of today compared to what we ate when we were kids.
Mhm.
And, processed foods are super ultra convenient, but they're super ultra processed and you lose the goodness every time you process. And so I think that, as I'm very passionate about making it more accessible to our kids so that they can understand what really good food is that,
Yeah.
really nourishes them.
And I think making it accessible and getting them to understand. We had this argument last night because someone did not want to eat green beans.
Oh,
It was a thing, and my statement was, they are going to keep being on your plate. You can choose to have a bite. You can choose not. I'm not going to wrestle you over the green beans, but they're going to keep being there, and we're going to keep. And little by little, it's also getting them that to have it be normal, quote unquote normal. What is normal? But, having them know you're going to have this option and you're going to have this fresh option. And we always talk about if the green beans in this instance happened to have been grown by a friend. And so we like to talk about that too of, where's it coming from? What do we do when we have the grapefruit? We talk about you. We talk about the Texas Citrus Mutual folks and our friends down in the valley. And so I hope we can continue to do that and bring the faces and people forward, because that's also part of the equation.
for
You're
sure.
you are supporting these folks, and you're getting product that they worried about, literally,
Hmm.
the whole way through. And I love that. I love that story behind what we eat, and that then I know we're getting our nutrients from the food. And I
Yeah.
think that's a piece I'm excited that we're talking about it more and more. We're talking about food as medicine more and more. And I don't think that's going to stop. I think maybe we're going to see a little resurgence of what you talked about, of that, homemade or less processed at the very least.
Yeah. We went to the Capitol, gosh, I guess it was 2 years ago now, maybe a year and a half. And we were lobbying for a Texas fresh fruits and vegetable days in the public schools here in Texas. And that did get passed.
Yeah.
And so that's exciting because teachers now have access to us to, incorporate agriculture into their lessons in a fun way. Um, but one of the other things we did when we went was several of us down here sent a ton of our produce to give away at the Capitol.
Yeah.
And it was so neat because the adults were like, wait, what's the catch? And we were like, there's no catch. Take it and
Yeah.
eat it, please. Like, we
Yeah.
just want you to be healthy. But the kids were so excited to get to, you know, select it, to talk to the farmer, to talk to
Yeah.
the grower, to ask questions and see, like, we had jicama there. Um, and it was so funny. I was helping at the jicama station and
Yeah.
everybody's like, what is that? And what do I do with it?
Yeah.
We kind of get in our little rut and we don't ever, try new things. And, but it was so fascinating to see the kids' reactions.
Yeah.
They were really excited about picking out their produce and knowing that it had come from the ground, that it
Yeah.
had come from these people
Yeah.
specifically. So I think
And
that is
how
a key piece.
And how often do they find new things they bring home to us?
Right.
I'm doing stuff now I never thought I would do, and eating stuff I never thought I would, and in good ways. It's not a bad thing, but I wouldn't have done it on my own. It's coming from my daughter, and slowly creeping its way into my normal. So it's pretty neat, and it's so important we get to do that. And I think that's where I'm so proud to be part of the Texas agriculture industry. When you see events like that, it's really, it's about public good. How do we help everybody be a
Yeah.
little healthier and think a little differently and be introduced to some of those things that will help you, and getting it to the school and helping demystify so much about this for our students, I think is crucial, because it's um I don't say this with judgment. We don't always think to do it at home. We may not have the resources to do it at home. We may not have the time to do it at home. But we can do it for each other. We can help each other succeed.
That's right. Absolutely. And, there's I'm just really proud of Texas. I feel like they are really leading the charge in this and, really helping kids to come into contact. The Farm Bureau, we did last
Mhm.
year, we had a live web feed with classrooms from all over the state. And I walked them
Yeah.
through the packing shed and they got to see how the machines process like
Yeah.
they clean it and how they pack it. And the kids were so engaged. They had such a good time. I had fabulous questions at the end.
Yeah.
from little kids.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of Texas. We have these great programs that are really trying to bring our kids back to fresh, healthy eating so that hopefully we don't need medicine in the first place, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
we're creating a generation of Texans that are back in touch with their most basic needs.
Yeah.
Fresh food.
Yep. So I will share if there are a couple of things you can do after this episode. Certainly look for Texas red grapefruit, whether it's the winter sweets or some of the other varieties that we talked about. And look for Texas oranges. So whether that's in juice form or you're going to peel it and enjoy it yourself, they're out there. And we know fall, winter, the holidays, perfect time, perfect flavoring to go look for those. The other thing, take a look at the Texas International Produce Association website. They have a lot of information on that school engagement and what we can do to help students and our youngsters learn more about what's grown here and what's available. So that's available if you're in a school, near a school, on a school board, you're homeschooling, whatever it is. Take a look at that in case that's helpful. The Texas Department of Agriculture and Texas Farm Bureau also have a lot of curriculum available that would weave some of this in. So take a look at that. And then absolutely go visit LoneStarCitrus.com to check out what they're up to, what's growing, what's in season. There's some neat giveaways going on. You can take a look at what they have available. And do you all ship?
We do. So that'll go through our brand website,
Okay.
sweets.com, and it's SWEETZ.
Okay.
So
So
wintersweets.com.
wintersweets.com.
And you
Perfect.
can
And
order and we'll ship it to your front door.
send a taste of Texas to the folks you love or to the folks that you think need to be a little sweeter in the holiday season. Either way, whatever it is, that's your choice. You don't have to tell them. But you can send a taste of Texas to folks and boost their vitamin C at the same time. It's a twofer. They're going to be happy, and you've snuck some healthiness in on them, especially in the season of all the pies. So that's important.
Yes.
Perfect. April, anything else that you want to share? Is there anything that we missed or didn't cover?
I mean, I think we covered a lot,
We hit
right?
I think we hit a lot. We
Yeah,
did.
we're just so excited. You know, we love what we do. We really do. It's a fully family organization. We're the last family commercial citrus packing shed. And it's here in Texas. And so we're very passionate about that. And we're very fortunate and we just appreciate that we're able to do this
Yeah.
for our living. It's a good industry and we love it.
Well, it's great to have you in it. You bring so much energy and passion to it. And I think just every time I've gotten to work with you, you also just make it a blast to learn about. So thank you for bringing that same energy and passion and insight here. You can check us out at uniquely-texas.com. You can go to Winter Sweets, Winter, WINTERSWEETZ.com for more information on Lone Star and how to ship that sweetness around. Thank you. This was great. Really appreciate it. May you be hurricane and drought free for the foreseeable future. No freezes. I don't think Texas is ready for that yet. But appreciate all that you do and thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.